you about Daniel. Now, all we know about Daniel is that Daniel was in a den of lions, and we haven't gone much further than that, but Daniel chapter 6 and verse 3 tells us that this Daniel, really referring to the Daniel that went through tremendous hurdles and challenges, this Daniel began distinguishing himself among the commissioners, amongst the captains. Because, why did he distinguish himself? Something very important to take note of. Because he possessed an extraordinary spirit. Everything that happened, everything that came through and from him was because he possessed an extraordinary spirit. And so I want to start there and tell you that if you want things to happen in your life, if you want favor with God and man, start working on your spirit. Carry what Daniel had, whatever it is. You think people are giving you a hard time, it's because of your spirit. If you think you're not being accepted anywhere, it's because of your spirit. You get your spirit right. Carry an extraordinary spirit. People will be wanting you wherever you go. People will be looking for you. Ask the Lord today to give you an or you don't want an ordinary spirit. You want an extraordinary spirit. Yes, we know Daniel as the one who survived the den of lions in the land of Babylon. But there's so much more to Daniel that meets the eyes and certainly meets the ears. Now, a little bit of background. We find in Daniel chapter 1 and verse 6, Daniel was deported as a teenager. Deported to a multi-God worshipping nation. Not an easy place to be. And this was after King Nebuchadnezzar, he besieged Jerusalem in the year 587 BC. And so Nebuchadnezzar took along with him lots of captives, lots of young people, lots of people belonging to the throne, to the royal family. But all this was prophesied. We notice the prophets Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Zechariah all prophesied that this would happen. Now, although Daniel served these kings of Babylon, he didn't go with the flow of what these kings said and done. It's so easy for us to just flow along and say, well, I'm just working for the boss. And so I must do what the boss tells me. There's a bigger boss, greater boss than any earthly boss. Especially when these kings' orders conflicted with God's orders. Daniel knew his God. Daniel knew who he served. We can learn so much from Daniel this morning and how to live holy lives in a very difficult, secular, ungodly world that we all find ourselves in at these times. So let's look at Daniel, the man, the young man. Now, you got your Bibles, look at the word Daniel. Look at the spelling of this word Daniel. It's D-A-N-I-E-L. L. You know what's L? God. And so the name of Daniel is God is my judge. In his name, God is my judge. From the scriptures we pick up, that's verse 3, you read it, you will see there that Daniel was likely from an upper class family in Jerusalem. Not only the scripture tells us, but a church historian, Josephus, He also says that as such was taken to Babylon among a group of nobles and royal family members. And so Daniel is amongst this very select group taken. Isaiah, the prophet, he prophesied this. You find it in Isaiah 39 and verse 7. Isaiah 39 and verse 7. Some of your descendants, your own flesh and blood, who will be born to you, will be taken away and will become princes, leaders in the palace of the king of Babylon. So here it is. Daniel is amongst those. Together with three of his close friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These outstanding young men are there taken to a foreign land, to a place where they worship many gods. But Daniel later was given some high-ranking governmental posts under the same king Nebuchadnezzar, and later King Belshazzar, Cyrus, and also Darius. You notice 4 different kings. And all of them saw something so outstanding in Daniel. Not one king, but 4 kings. Shows that he truly had an excellent spirit. Then Daniel underwent a name change. One of the chief officials in Babylon gave Daniel the name Belteshazzar, which means, Beltes means protect the king. And so his work was to protect the king. I believe that's what we are called also to do. Protect the name of our king. We all have that name change. And so Daniel, if we look at him, his natural talents and then his divine inspiration made Daniel a man of great wisdom. God's looking for young men and women with great wisdom today. You know, when you hear people speak, when you hear them on television, when they interviewed, you think, Lord have mercy on us. We need people of great wisdom. And only God can give people of great wisdom to our nation. So if there's a prayer you must be praying, give us wisdom, Lord. Give us people of great wisdom. Daniel is described in chapter 1 verse 4 as one of the young men without any physical defect. So this guy is just not got it inside his head. He is just it. Just read Daniel 1:4. No physical defects. I don't know the meaning of that really. You can work it out. Maybe the best shaped nose. What else? I don't know. Someone without any physical defects. I mean, what is the best size to be called? You work it out. Handsome? What is handsome? You can work that out. Showing, now this is something, showing an aptitude for every kind of learning. Well informed, not a dull boy. This is no dull person. When he opened his mouth, wisdom, you know, some people, when you open the mouth, you want to run away, to stink, both ways. But this guy was well informed, quick to understand, qualified to serve the king. What a CV. What a CV that Daniel had. God gave, verse 17, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. So, it doesn't matter what standard you passed in school, God can give you understanding of Shakespeare and everything. You can have it all because God can give that to you. Doesn't matter if you failed, God can give it to you. So Daniel and his three friends were real bright boys. And that gave them great favor with the king. You want favor with the king, then you need great wisdom. And God's the only one that can give you. Look at verses 19 and 20. In every matter of wisdom and understanding, about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the whole region. Just amazing. It is possible to have the edge on everybody. Doesn't matter about their education. Doesn't matter which university they went to. But when you know God, amen. When you know your God, He'll give you the edge. You'll be 10 times better than them all. God blessed them so and gave them great favor with the king. Yet it was Daniel who was the one who could decipher visions and dreams when nobody in the whole kingdom could understand. Daniel could. You can be the only one in the nation when you have an excellent spirit. You can be the only one in the entire country. Kings will search for you and want your wisdom. So we see that Daniel gained a reputation, firstly, as an interpreter of other man's dreams. He gained the reputation. Now, a lot of people like that, so they go around trying to interpret people's dreams. They do it with their own kind of knowledge, which is flawed. But when you have God's knowledge, you'll be spot on with whatever you say. So firstly, he was blessed as an interpreter of other men's vision, then of his own. And one of the most amazing things about Daniel was he predicted the future triumph of the Messianic kingdom. He saw it 2,000 years in advance. Daniel saw it, and Daniel understood that. Here was a man with such immense wisdom. Several of the visions and dreams Daniel interpreted, and the knowledge told to him concerned end-time events that are unfolding right before our eyes in these present days. Daniel saw it hundreds, thousands of years ago. In fact, even Jesus himself acknowledged Daniel's end-time prophecies. 2 times in the Gospel, Jesus referred to Daniel's prophecies. We'll look at just one. Matthew 24 and verse 15. Matthew 24 and verse 15. You know, Jesus himself comments on what Daniel said. Matthew 24:15. Jesus says, "When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet." When you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso read it, understand. God himself through Jesus is endorsing the words of Daniel. And so it's important that we take note what Daniel is saying. Chapter 2, verses 31 to 45 is one of the most amazing disclosures of the end time. And Daniel was the one that could open the wrapping and make it so clear to us. This young man with an excellent spirit. It means if there's no guile in your life, it means when there's no hindrances in your life, God can reveal things to you that He won't reveal to anybody else. Daniel helps King Nebuchadnezzar understand that this great statue that the king saw in a dream represents various successive kingdoms that would finally make it show on the earth, and then will be brought to an end by a kingdom that will endure forever and ever and ever. Daniel saw it all, long before anybody saw this happen. And so, how amazing. The men of Babylon, they saw God's sovereignty, they saw God's power working in Daniel's life. They even told the king. Find that in chapter 5, verse 11. I wonder if this is going to be possible for us. It should be. Daniel chapter 5, verse 11. This is what they say to the king. There's a man in your kingdom in whom is the Spirit of the living God, the Holy God. There's a man in the kingdom. We heard, we saw, we've experienced a man in the kingdom whom is the Spirit of the Holy God. What did they see in us? What did they see in you? Do they see that the Spirit of the Holy God lives in you? Daniel is able to see right through and see what God is doing into all of their lives. What does it record? One of our most outstanding verses in the book of Daniel, chapter 11 and verse 32. And everybody must grab that and pray and ask God to make that a reality in their own lives. Daniel chapter 11 and verse 32. The people. So, we all have been brought into it now. We heard about Daniel, a little bit about Daniel's great knowledge. But here it is. The people who know their God shall be strong. When you know God, you'll be strong. Feeling weak all the time, it means you don't have a relationship with God. You need to know your God. When you know your God, you're connected to Him. Those who know their God shall be strong. And when you're strong, what can you do? You do great exploits. Not ordinary exploits, great exploits. Why? Because you know your God. Most people want to know somebody, know some contact, know some businessman, know here, know there. But here we have the answer. Those who know their God. Dear brothers and sisters, I believe this is where we missed it. This is where we missed it. If there's anything we need to strive for, travail for, pray for, is to know our God. Knowing man is only half the battle. Knowing man is good. We need relationship. We need fellowship. But you can't do great exploits. You're not going to be strong. We want to be strong. Strong for what? Strong for the challenges that will come our way. Strong for the difficulties that will come to hinder us. We need to be strong in these difficult times. We're called to be strong people. The church needs to be strong. Its people need to be strong. Not tossed about by every wind of doctrine. We need to be strong. The people who know their God shall be strong. The people who know their God. How do you know God? You know Him personally. He's your God. You just don't know Him about, what people have to say, what others are talking about. You want a personal revelation of your God. If He's just a God in the Bible and God in the church and you know nothing else, then it's not going to connect with you. Do you have a connection with this God? Is there a connection with Him? If there's no connection with Him, you're going to continue to be weak. You'll continue battling and trying and earning your little money and seeing by the middle of the month it doesn't go through. Suffering to buy food, suffering to keep your family together. One reason: you don't know your God. No matter how much of money you get, you still can't make it. You don't know your God. Those who know their God. Do you know your God? Or you know all the pop fellas, pop stars and all the dancing acts? You know how to dance like this person and that person. You can dance like them. That won't help you. You can dance for the rest of your life. You die dancing, but nothing will change. You need to know your God. Following all the moves of the film stars is not going to help you at all. Knowing them is not going to help you. Knowing all the football players not going to help you. So don't waste your time knowing about them. Don't waste your time thinking that you can be like them and kick the ball like them. It won't help you. The people who know their God shall be strong. That's what we see in Daniel. He knew his God. Our problem in the church is we know everybody else. We know what their problems are, what their problems are. We're always snooping around to see what we can know about people. We're snooping around to see what we can talk about people. But it's time that we start to know God. Know Him. And then we can do great exploits. But my greatest observation of Daniel is that Daniel was a man of prayer. That sums it up about Daniel. You know, this lion's den and all of this stuff is only because he was a man of prayer. So you can face your barrage of lions, you can face the kings, you can face everybody and anybody if you are a person of prayer. It's a known fact that the Jews in that day and age would look towards Jerusalem and pray. You know, they didn't have a relationship with a personal God like we do. They didn't have a relationship with the Holy Spirit like we did and do. So they had to get some direction. So they felt if we look towards Jerusalem, then we are connecting to God. That's how they did it. So Daniel constantly kept his time with his God, even when the law said you don't. Even when the king said nobody must pray. That can't stop you. I know many people will just be so happy and think, well, I don't have to pray because it's legal to pray, so I don't need to pray. But not Daniel. The Bible says 3 times a day he turned towards Jerusalem to pray. Even when his life was in danger, he didn't close the curtains and hide under his bed and pray. He went to his window. He looked out of his window towards Jerusalem and he started to pray. And I don't think he was mumbling. They heard him, they saw him. He was a man of prayer. See, Daniel knew from reading the scrolls of Jeremiah that the people of Israel would be in exile in Babylon, and that would last 70 long years. Now Daniel already knew that this time was drawing to an end. Now I ask myself, what would most people do when they have that kind of revelation? Oh, they'll run all over the town. They will advertise it. They will pump themselves up in the newspapers and television. They will make sure that everybody knows they have some great revelation. That's what we have today. Little bit somebody knows. They're big shots. They're writing the book now. They want to be the authors and great big guys. But look at Daniel. He has this revelation that the time is at hand. The people of Israel will be released. What does Daniel do? Does he go and pack his bags up because he's going to be released? Did he alert all the people and tell them, get ready, get ready? I know what's going to happen to you. No. Instead of taking the prophecy and running around and publishing it, he prayed to God for the promise of this restoration to happen. He wanted to see God endorse it and bring it to pass. And so he prayed. Most people would think they have the license to talk, license to shout, license to broadcast. When you given something by God, it doesn't mean that you become a broadcaster. You're not sanctioned to be a broadcast agent. You are trusted with information that God gives you. And the first thing you do is pray about it. Before you open your mouth, before you broadcast, you pray. And so what we see in many ways, Daniel's prayer in chapter 9 can be a model prayer for all of us who seek God at this very difficult time in our country to restore our wayward system, our wayward politicians, our wayward everybody. Bring us back in line. Now, I think we need to go back to chapter 9 and ask the Lord to show us how we can bring about the restoration of our nation. People are praying all over the country. People are crying to God at this time. But we need to find out how to do it. Don't join the crowd and just go along with the crowd. Ask God to show you how do we do this. Now, look at Daniel. Firstly, we see in verse 9. Daniel chapter 9 and verse 3. 9 verse 3. What do we see? Firstly, Daniel came to God humbly. When we come to God humbly in prayer, in fasting, and in sackcloth and ashes, it really shows our rightful place. We can't tell God what to do. We can't tell God what kind of solution we want. You see, the government is upon His shoulder. And too often when we come to pray, we already want to tell God what to do. We already got the solution to the problem. Why do you have to go to God if you've got the solution? Why do you have to talk to Him if you know what is the solution to the problems? So what we see in Daniel is, firstly, he came to God humbly. When you come to God humbly, it means you're asking for His intervention. You're asking Him to draw on this matter. So the posture of humility is an inward posture and an outward posture. Inwardly, he was humble. There was fasting. Inward posture, fasting. I'm going to cause my body to be hurt. Let it pain. I'm going to go without food. And then we have the sackcloth and ashes, an outward manifestation of humility. Only beggars would have signs of sackcloth and ashes because they got nothing. Because they're living in the dumps. Because they out in the open. They would be marked with ashes. And so when you come down to that level, you're showing the Lord, that we are destitute. We don't have the answers. We can't do anything. And therefore we come to Him in that kind of posture, humbly before Him. And so we must examine first and foremost, what is our posture when we come to the Lord? Are we coming humbly to Him? Are we seeking Him for His intervention, or we already have some solution and we want Him to endorse it? Prayer never works that way. Then secondly, from verses 5 to 16, we notice that Daniel confessed the sins of the people of Israel. He said, it's our action, O Lord, that caused us to be put in exile. So there's no blaming God. Too often people want to blame God. We are your people. You made these promises. Why these people have done that to us? Why did they put us in exile? No, this is not from Daniel. There's no blame game here. He confesses the sins of the people, and he makes it very clear to God, it's our sins, our actions that caused us to be in exile. Not blaming God for it. So, where are you today? About your situation, about your pain, about your hurts, about the things that you're going through. Are you blaming God for it? It won't work out that way. And so we see very clearly here that Daniel, he was not interested in blaming the leaders, blaming the government, blaming the king, blaming the army. We like that, blaming everybody. We find it easier to blame everybody else for our situation. Oh, I'm in this because so-and-so did. Oh, I'm in this because my father was a terrible man. And some people will die with that knowledge. It's not so. God is not going to hear us as long as we blame others. And so when we look at those verses from 5 to 16, very clearly we see that Daniel affirmed God's righteousness. God is righteous. He will not commit to anything that is unrighteous. He will not bless that is not good. So we did something wrong. You are righteous. You are always good. You are always faithful. We have failed, Lord. I believe that's the only way we can come to God if we want God to hear our prayers. But then when we come to Him and we always got, somebody there, they did this, they did that, oh, they don't like me, they hate me. Never get our prayers answered that way. We'll never progress in anything for God that way. And so Daniel affirms God's righteousness. God can do no wrong. God can do no harm to us. God never does that. He always judges sin. And the way He judges sin, by permitting them to be in exile. So if you are in your exile today, wherever you're exiled from, it's because of your sin. You can't be accepted in your home, in your family, in your country, and you are a refugee, it's because of your sin. Don't blame the government for it. Don't blame your father for it. Don't blame your situation and circumstances for it. Thirdly, Daniel did what I believe Moses and even the sons David often did. But we find it so hard to do. He appealed to God's righteousness. At all times, we must appeal to God's righteousness as a reason for the restoration of His people, as a reason for the restoration of our nation. We have to appeal to God's righteousness. God cannot do anything wrong. God himself sees the filth, sees the terrible situation of our nation. God himself is pained by it. You think God likes to see all these laws that are passed in our government as good? He is appalled by it as well. And so Daniel appealed to the reputation, to the righteous reputation of God. And he said, God, this is your people. And because they carry your name, your reputation is at stake. Look at verse 19. Verse 19. Lord, forgive. Lord, hear and act. For your sake, not for our sake, for your sake, my people, do not delay, because your city and your people bear your name. Your reputation is at stake, O Lord. Your people, they carry your name. It's like if you had a child out there and he carried your name and he'd become estranged from the family, he was out begging. Somebody will come up to you and say, your name is at stake. Everybody's going to talk about your name. You better do something. Your name. When they see that boy, it's your name. When they see that girl, it's your name. Daniel says, it's your name, Lord. Your name is at stake. It's your people. They carry your name. Jerusalem carries your name. You've got to do something about this. Your name. How about us today? We carry the name of the Lord. God's reputation is at stake when they say, you're a Christian. You go to that church. Reputation. God's reputation is at stake. Alexander once, King Alexander, he saw a man. The man was in a very, very bad state. And he had the name Alexander. He called him up. Said, everybody in town knows your name. And you carry my name. You better change your life, change your ways, or change your name. You can't have my name if that's how you live. And so we must change our religion. Go be something else. We can't be Christians because God's reputation is at stake. Every time they see you smoke, every time they see you drink, every time they see you in some shebeen, every time they see you womanizing, they say, you're a Christian. You're a Christian. You're a Christian. Christ's name is being pulled down. Every time you gossip and slander and talk about somebody else, you're a Christian. You're not supposed to. God's reputation is at stake. We carry his name. We carry his name. Better you not be a Christian. Better you change. God's reputation is at stake. You can't be a Christian. When we fail, when we fall, when we wander off, it is God's reputation. Yet God is ever willing to see us prosper and succeed. And he's forever calling us to himself as his very special possession. Doesn't want to let us go. But we need to come to him as Daniel, humbly, confessing our sins, acknowledging God's sovereignty over our lives, appealing to God's righteous reputation, not our reputation, not our righteousness, trying to weigh the situation by what we believe. No, it doesn't help at all. The point is that we have been created to glorify Him and Him alone. Full stop. That's the whole reason why God created us. To glorify Him. You can't glorify Him with a big cigarette in your mouth. You can't glorify Him with all those evil things. You can't glorify Him. You're glorifying the devil. Daniel is caught praying to God, which violated the king's command. As punishment, Daniel is thrown into this den of lions. This is where you meet him. But Daniel is a man of uncompromising faith. Uncompromising. The lions are not going to shake his faith. The lions are not going to get him to change his prayer life. No lion is going to change that. Sometimes having great wisdom is not enough to stay in a very hostile environment. In fact, thousands upon thousands of martyrs have died over the centuries standing up for God. Standing up for God. But Daniel and his three friends had unique favor and calling on their lives, living amongst a very pagan bunch of people. How did they handle it? How did they handle it? We need to know that in closing today. How did Daniel and his three friends handle all this opposition, handle all the negativity, handle the government that was against them? How did he handle it? Daniel obeyed God. Daniel obeyed God, putting his trust in God at all times. Whatever the consequences are, that is not the issue, but trusting the Lord. And so, folks, Daniel's legacy lives on. Daniel's legacy remains strong, and over 2,000 years have gone by, still strong. When they found some parchments and old copies that were found in the caves, the Bible copies, they found 8 copies of the book of Daniel in those caves. Now that will show you how very well known and popular the book of Daniel was even in those days, for 8 original copies to still be in the museums of today. The last mention of Daniel himself is the 3rd year of Cyrus. You find that in Daniel 10, chapter 1. Again, the church historian Josephus reported that Daniel's body was buried in Susa, Iran, near the house where some of the vessels of the great temple were also found. Now, it doesn't matter wherever his body was buried. The fact is, the legacy of his faithfulness lives on. What kind of legacy will you leave? You may not have money, you may not have buildings, you may not have any of those tangible things that people can see. We have none of that in Daniel, but Daniel left a legacy of faithfulness. I believe every one of us can aim for that. We may not be able to put up great towers. We may not be able to do great things that this world can remember, but one thing we can leave is a legacy of faithfulness. May we be ever learning, ever faithful and ever prayerful in these days, and Daniel was in his day. Daniel didn't have a blotch on him. As far as his faithfulness was concerned, he was faithful until the end. Most prophets died early, people killed them, but Daniel lived to a ripe old age of 95, and then he died. So Daniel was a great young man who did some great exploits for the Lord because he knew his Lord. So this morning we've learned a couple of things about Daniel, and I trust that you'll grab some of it and emulate those things even in your life. Let's pray.